Good morning on this beautiful Sunday. Today I'm going to be reading Francis the Earthquake Dog. It is by Judith, Russ, and Enderle and Stephanie Gordon Tessler, and is illustrated by Brooke, Scudder. This is one of my favorite books as a kid just because the art is so beautiful and colorful. I got it at a Scholastic book fair and I just loved reading this book. It's also supposed to be based on real life events from, I think it was a San Francisco earthquake. So anyway, I'm gonna get ready to read this book. Edward raced up the steep San Francisco hill. Papa would be upset if he was late again. Automobiles honked, cable cars clanked, carriage wheels clattered. Suddenly a little dog ran in front of a vegetable cart. The cart horse reared. Tomatoes, potatoes, cabbages tumbled downhill. As the cart driver shouted, Edward scooped up the quivering dog. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I'll take care of you." At the St. Francis Hotel, Papa was waiting. His mustache drooped a little. His chef's hat shook. "You are late," he roared, "and no dogs allowed in my kitchen." "Please, Papa," Edward begged. "He's lost." The little dog wagged his tail, but Papa's mustache curled upward. "Put him in the cellar. Hurry, you must set the table. Tonight is the grand party of Enrico Caruso, the famous opera singer." "Yes, Papa. Thank you, Papa." Edward shut the cellar door. "Woo, woo, woo," cried the little dog. "Do I hear Enrico Caruso, the great opera singer?" the pastry cook teased. "Get to work," said Papa, "or we will be singing sad songs when the food isn't ready." Edward washed his hands. Just as he was picking up a stack of china plates, the sauce chef opened the cellar door, and the little dog raced out. "Stop!" shouted Edward. "Get that dog!" shouted Papa. Edward ran after the little dog, but there was no little dog in the pantry. There was no dog in the dumbwaiter. There was no little dog in the laundry room. Suddenly, a scream came from the lobby of the hotel. Edward ran faster. "Who let this dog in here?" demanded the manager. His stiff collar stood at attention. "No dogs allowed in my hotel." Edward ducked behind a potted palm. His heart was racing. The little dog was in big trouble now. "Woof, woof, woof, woof," barked the little dog. A lady wearing a feathered hat hid behind a bellhop. The bellhop hid behind the manager. "Shoo, shoo, shoo," the manager cried. Edward reached for the little dog. The palm tipped over. "Look what you've done," shouted the hotel manager. His face turned as red as raspberries. The lady with the feathered hat scurried to the elevator. Then a man as round as a barrel strode through the lobby and stepped in after her. The little dog dashed into the elevator too. The man's voice rang out like a church bell. "Up, please!" "Wait!" shouted Edward, but the elevator doors slid shut. Edward raced up the hotel stairs. The little dog wasn't on the first floor. He wasn't on the second floor. He wasn't on any of the floors in the St. Francis Hotel. Edward scuffed back to the kitchen. The sauce chef's savory broth bubbled. The sweet smell of pastry chef's lemon tarts tickled Edward's nose, but there was no dog in the kitchen either. "You've broken 6 plates," Papa said with a sniffle as he diced onions. "Oh, my eyes are watering too. And you've lost the dog in the St. Francis Hotel." His mustache drooped way down. "I'm sorry," Edward said. He wiped away an onion tear. "I've looked everywhere." "Later you will look some more," said Papa. "Now you must set the tables." In the dining room, Edward placed the forks and spoons and knives at each plate. While he worked, Edward worried about the little dog. That evening, while Papa directed the hustle and bustle in the kitchen, Edward snuck into the lobby. Excited whispers swept through the crowd when Enrico Caruso made his grand entrance. The opera singer was the same man man who had gotten on the elevator that afternoon. Maybe he knew where the little dog was. Edward inched forward. "Mr. Caruso, please sing for us," begged a lady. "Please, sir," Edward began, hoping that the great Enrico Caruso could tell him where the little dog had gone. Caruso looked down. "For the boy, then, a few fantastico notes." The singer spread his arms, and his voice echoed like thunder. The last note was so long Edward felt out of breath. Then the great opera singer was swallowed up by the crowd before Edward had a chance to ask him about the little dog. Very late that night, Edward and Papa climbed the stairs to their boarding house. Papa's mustache curled way up. Mr. Caruso's grand party had made Papa forget all about the little dog, and Edward didn't remind him. With nightshirts on, they climbed into a squeaky brass bed. Edward prayed, "Hello to Mama, who is with the angels. Please bless Papa and help me be smart in school. And," he whispered, "please help me find the little dog. Amen." The sputter and stomp of horses and the howling of dogs carried on the night air. Beside him, Papa snored. Edward finally fell asleep, worrying about the little dog. Suddenly, the big brass bed bounced, and Papa and Edward tumbled out. The boarding house rocked like a boat in the ocean. "Don't be afraid," said Papa, hugging Edward. "I have you." "And I have you," said Edward, hugging Papa. The ground rumbled, and their bed slid across the floor. When the shaking stopped, Papa grabbed Edward's hand and his chef's hat, and they ran outside. Papa looked funny wearing his nightgown and chef's hat, but Edward didn't laugh. "Earthquake! Earthquake!" someone shouted. People rushed about. Glass, wood, bricks were strewn everywhere. Water lines burst. Oh man, my allergies are crazy today. Electric lines snapped. Smoky morning sky was awash red as fire spread through the San Francisco. It took Edward and Papa a long time to make their way safely to the Golden Gate Park. Houses and buildings lay in crumbled heaps, and Edward worried more than ever about the dog. All right, days passed, and Papa and Edward lived in an army tent. Edward carried buckets of water, and Papa made earthquake stew and bonfire biscuits for hungry people who stood in long lines. Once Edward heard barking. "Here, little dog," he called, but it wasn't his little dog. Papa's mustache drooped all the time now. "I don't have a kitchen," he said. "We don't have a boarding house. We don't even have a city. But we have each other," said Edward. Papa's mustache lifted just a little. He hugged Edward. "You are right. We have each other. And that is important." Soon, people were working to rebuild San Francisco. Edward and Papa carried books from the tumble-down library to a warehouse, where the books would be stored until the new library could be built. They cleared away bricks that covered cable car tracks, and they helped haul rubble from the St. Francis Motel. The hotel had survived the earthquake, but had been damaged in the fire. Edward found the brass bell from the desk in the lobby. He found 3 keys and 1 silver fork. Suddenly, Edward heard, "Woof, woof, woof, woof." "Papa," he shouted, "we must dig." They pushed, they pulled, they tugged, and they dug. "I see him," Edward shouted. A tiny black nose poked from under a heap. Hands heaved the rubble into high piles until, at last, the little dog scrambled from the basement of the St. Francis Motel. Or hotel. Edward scooped him up, and the little dog licked his face. "May I keep him, Papa, please?" he asked. Papa patted the little dog. "You'll take care of him?" "Oh, yes, Papa," said Edward. "You won't lose him?" "Oh, no, Papa," said Edward. "I'll call him Francis, after your hotel. Francis, the earthquake dog." Papa's mustache curved way up. "Woof, woof, woof, woof," barked Francis, the earthquake dog. The end. And in the back, I thought it was pretty cool. It lists interesting facts about earthquakes and what you should do if there is ever an earthquake where you live. But that's our book for today. All right, thanks. You have a great Sunday afternoon. Okay, so first you'll need some baking soda, a regular empty plastic bottle, some white vinegar, and some balloons. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna fill the bottle 1/3 of the way with vinegar. Whew. I hate the smell of vinegar. Ugh. Okay. Okay, next we're gonna put some baking soda carefully into the balloon. Hope I can shake it down there. Oh no! Oh boy. This is a lot harder than it looks. Okay, I hope that's enough. Okay. Okay, next we're gonna put this around there. And then when you're ready, you're supposed to shake the baking soda in with the vinegar. We'll see what happens. Check it out! It's blowing up the balloon! That's pretty cool. Obviously, the more baking soda you add, the bigger the balloon. But hey, it's pretty cool.